компании Anitton, лабор в Германии. Значит, она работает там с 2012 года. До этого она была ветврачом практикующим и защитила кандидатскую степень по, значит, курам-несушкам. Это очень важный момент, буквально на одну секунду мы отвлечемся. В России до сих пор нет законодательно разрешенной практики использования аутогенных вакцин. В Европе она существовала всегда, по крайней мере, очень давно, много десятков лет. И сегодня эта практика видится очень важным, а может быть даже единственным в случае некоторых болезней методом контроля бактериальных, а также вирусных вакцин, изготовленных из патогенов, выделенных в условиях птицефабрик. То есть производственные патогены и такие вот индивидуальные вакцины, сделанные под определенные условия. Они очень хорошо работают и показывают эффективность. И вот сейчас у нас идет процесс политического урегулирования, значит, разрешительных всех вопросов, чтобы в России эта тема наконец-то была запущена, и мы имели возможность ею пользоваться. Поэтому давайте послушаем и потом постараемся уложиться в срок. Будем думать над вопросами. So, Svantje, you are welcome. Thanks again for joining us. You can now share your screen and we're carefully listening to your presentation. Just a second. Let me switch this off.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I was not able to follow you, but I think it was what I sent you and only nice words. Thank you. So it's an honor to be here today. I will start with sharing. I hope it will work.
I was just telling about the importance of autogenous vaccines, production and use. And
yes.
I hope you will confirm that.
Yes, I hope so too. So can you see it now? Is it good for you?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect.
I introduced you, so we can go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. So time is running. And I would like to talk about prevention first and the use of autogenous vaccines in Turkey. And I would like to give you a small overview here. We will have a short look of the use of antibiotics, especially in Germany and the situation here. The most popular pathogens you are fighting against on routine basis. Of course, I will pick out some interesting and not all, because the colleagues before has already mentioned AI and HE and so on. But I would have a look on these pathogens regarding autogenous vaccines as well. And we would like to talk about how to prevent infectious diseases and the use of autogenous vaccines. So the use of antibiotics. It's a situation that within the EU, the ban of growth promoters has taken place from 2006 onwards, and coccidiostats are still allowed to use and to control, of course, the problems of coccidiosis in poultry, and the control of the reduction of the general use of antibiotics in productive animals started very intensively in 2014. And as well in the Netherlands and in Denmark and in other countries of the EU, it's very, they are giving a lot of awareness of the use of antibiotics, and in general we are trying to reduce the use of antibiotics. And in Germany it's like this: each treatment which has to be done in a flock has to be documented in a database, so it's official then. And if the use in your flock is above a critical limit, you have to perform some concepts for reduction with your vet together, or if you are the vet, with your farmer. And this will be controlled by the authorities. And here in this picture, you can see the situation in Germany between 2011 and 2019. In 2011, they started to count the tons of antibiotic used in farm animals. And as you see here, that there's a reduction. I think it's around 60% of the usage of antibiotics in general in the farm animals. And the use of antibiotics is heavily discussed. It's a topic of public interest. The consumers are critical observing animal welfare issues. And you know, if there are some news regarding animal welfare, there's normally not the ideal housing system or the ideal farm. So they are picking out always some very critical pictures and how it should not to be. And so the consumers are very informed, and most of them from the negative side, but as well the poultry industry and the poultry community started as well some transparent projects to show interested people to the public a look inside animal farming as well. Yeah. The consumers would like to have healthy food from healthy and happy animals, just to say. And in general, we have very strict regulations for the control of food. And the import from non-EU countries is under very strict control refers to the laws. And we do have as well an eye on the limits of residues. This is regarding the situation of antibiotics in Germany and a little bit in the neighbor countries. So the most popular pathogens in Turkey, as I said to you, I would like to talk about what are you facing in routine work with turkeys. So you all know E. coli, coccidiosis, Clostridium perfringens, ORT, Bordetella avium, and all this can happen in the rearing phase. Of course, there are some other issues you can see, but these are the most, I would like to say, popular. But I have to mention the occurrence of the disease may vary in different regions. For example, Anicon Lab is located in a very poultry dense populated area, and you can see here, for example, even Rimarella anatipestiva in turkeys, whereas you can not see this pathogen if you move 100 kilometers further on. And in the fattening period, as you may all know, you have as well E. coli problems, ORT, Bordetella, as well avium, bronchiseptica, Hinzii, whatever. MG and MS are still a problem and can occur. Staphylococcus aureus can cause problems. Clostridium perfringens, like we heard as well before. And of course, I put it in brackets because it's not very routinely, but when it comes, it can be worse. Rimarella anatipestiva, Pastorella multicida, or erysipelas. And of course, reovirus can cause problems when it's coming to arthritis. I would like to have a closer look now on our ORT, Ornithobacterium rhinotracheale, because this is one of the most popular turkey pathogens. It leads to respiratory infections as well as arthritis. So it's a gram-negative, non-motile rod-shaped bacterium. It grows in very fine and tiny colonies, as you may see it here on the picture. And therefore, it's very important that the lab staff is well experienced in this, because if the samples are somehow mixed with other bacteria, it can occur that you have bacterial overgrowth and you have to subculture it very well. And if you do not have an, like say, expert eye on this, you may overlook it and throw the plate away because you think, okay, it's just E. coli or maybe it's proteus. So it's very important to have very clean swabs and as well to have a very, very expert look on this if you read the cultures. And often it's very you have to subculture several times if the swabs have been dirty. The ORT infection can appear as well in very young poultries, turkeys, and in very young pools. So it can happen in the worst case with 2 weeks. But as you all may know, until the whole fattening period, until you will bring the turkeys to slaughter, it can appear and can cause a lot of problems. The incubation time is 2 to 5 days. The symptoms are respiratory signs like sneezing, nasal discharge. It can lead to fibrinous pneumonia and aerosacculitis. This is the typical pathological anatomical finding. Polyserositis, you may see maybe that you have a pericarditis, which is looking a little bit like E. coli. And of course, you can have as well mixed infections. And it can as well cause arthritis and a general depression and an increase of mortality regarding to the alterations. And as I was working in the field, I saw several times only mild sneezing, and then you were thinking maybe we can go and treat with some feed additives like some etheric oils for better breathing and not very invasive with antibiotics. But later on, maybe this was a mild sneezing, which is then developed to a very heavy arthritis. This can occur, and you have to keep in mind if it's not very clear what to do, so make diagnostics and have a close look on what's going on in the field, because the pathogenicity is varying a lot between the different OAT isolates. And as well, you have more than or approximately 18 serotypes. And you can't say, okay, it's this serotype, it's very aggressive, or this, it's not aggressive. It has to be, it has to be isolated from the alterations to see if it's very aggressive or not, or invasive. And if you find it only in the trachea, first, it means nothing, because it can be as well from the surrounding and just breathed in. But maybe it's not already in the lungs or in the air sacs or as a septicemia around the bird. So it's very interesting for this isolate or for this bacterium to go there where the alterations are. Very often, this ORT infection appears after a TAT infection, because TAT is damaging the tracheal cilia epithelium, and it stops working. So everything is blocked in the trachea. The cilials are not motile anymore. And so the bacteria can come as a secondary infection. And for this, I would like to say to you, don't forget the TAT vaccination, because it can help you to get rid of severe ORT infections as well. Very often you see as well secondary bacterial infections after ORT infection, like ORT, for example. ORT as a pathogen or as an antigen is very successful used in autogenous vaccines. And the suitable samples for cultivation are from, as I mentioned before, from alterated organs like lungs and air sacs, the pericardium, if pericarditis is there, and of course from the inflamed joints, the synovia and the liquid, and most they are infected the intertarsal joints, but maybe you can have it in the knee joint as well if it's circulating via septicemia. And once again, don't forget to include TAT in your vaccination program. It can protect the trachea from being colonized by ORT. How to prevent infectious diseases? Yeah, it's very easy to say improvement of management and vaccination, but you all know it's not easy like this, because even in the management, there are a lot of things which are which can have an influence on the performance of your flock. So many factors have an impact on the health status of your turkeys. So the denseness of poultry population, you can have regional infectious pressure if there is a very dense poultry populated area like we have here in the neighborhood. The stocking rate as well have an influence or may have an influence. The building, of course, if it's not very well isolated, or if the curtains are not closing when it's windy, or if it's not easy to clean, this can cause as well some problems which can occur in several periods after themselves, so with a repetition. And the equipment, of course, so the drinkers should work fine, and the feeders, and as well everything should be clean and easy to clean, and have an eye on it in the service period. The feed, of course, is important for the gut health. The gut health is important for the immune system, so all is somehow linked together. The litter quality, of course, the temperature in the house, air conditioning, separation, and the selection of sick animals can have a big influence as well, because if you select them and cull the sick ones early enough, this may protect the others from getting infected. And last but not least, biosecurity is always very important. And there are a lot of screws you can maybe fix or some change, and this can have an influence on the health status of the flock as well. Once again, vaccination to prevent infectious diseases. You have the choice of different commercial vaccines, but you can also go for autogenous vaccines. And I would like to talk about autogenous vaccines, because this is beside diagnostics and PCR kits and feed and food safety, our daily business. But what are the reasons for autogenous vaccines? The reasons are reoccurring problems of the farm. For example, every time OAT infections, every time Bordetella, and as well, if you think you can reduce the morbidity and mortality with using autogenous vaccine. And you can as well think about autogenous vaccines if you are facing a problem, and for this pathogen, there's no licensed or commercial vaccine on the market. Or it is used in addition to a licensed vaccine or commercial vaccine. This can help you as well. In poultry, there are limited options of therapy sometimes, and this makes you maybe think about as well for the use of autogenous vaccines. And last but not least, very important, the reduction of antibiotic use. Autogenous vaccines, so-called custom-made vaccines, are inactivated vaccines. And these are all adjuvanted products with oil or aluminum hydroxide. They are often polyvalent, so it means there are several antigens inside, but of course, always referring to the problems you had on the farm. And it may contain bacterial and or viral antigens. The production, so I can talk only about what is the matter in the EU. The production and use are allowed if no licensed product in the market or licensed product are not available. So maybe there's a shortage that you can't buy this product, or the licensed product is without proven efficacy. So maybe you have a vaccine against some special pathogen and a special serotype in it, but it's not working because you're facing another serotype. Then it can be useful to switch to autogenous vaccines. In the EU, no registration of products is needed, but you do have authorization of the production. So it's very strict controlled. So by nature, the isolates that autogenous producers are gaining from the field are no GMP isolates. Therefore, it's not or never real GMP, it's GMP-like. And GMP-like is what we are doing as well here at Anicon, and we do have, for example, a GMP-like license. There are as well country-specific registration processes, and there will be a support by local agents and customers. And mostly there will be the need for a specific import license. If we are talking about autogenous vaccines, it has to be clear that the isolate, the pathogen, for example, ORT, has to be isolated from a particular farm. You will have all these diagnostics. And then the vaccine is produced for this farm or an epidemiological linked farm where you before isolated the pathogen. So this can, for example, be isolates from a production farm. And these isolates were put into a vaccine, and this vaccine will be applied in the rearing house to the next generation of turkey flocks. Or as well, if you would like to prevent diseases in your parent stock and you would like to give immunity to the offspring of this flock, you can as well vaccinate the parent flock with isolates from the offspring. Autogenous vaccines are very flexible products. So you have the chance to combine several antigens together. There are diverse isolates per antigen available. For example, ORT, serotype A plus B or C, and you can make a vaccine containing 3 isolates or 4. But it depends what was your problem in the past and for which isolate you would like to prevent your flock to get sick. You can use different adjuvants like oil or aluminum hydroxide. In turkeys, it's most, in routine cases, it's oil. For parents, for example, we use aluminum hydroxide. The bottle size may vary and the volume produced per dose as well. Normally, it's for turkeys 0.5 ml per bird, or it can be as well 0.3 for fattening turkeys. And we are producing as well hatchery vaccines, for example, with 0.2 ml. And these autogenous vaccines, if all regulations can be fulfilled, can be designed specifically to your needs. These are some examples about autogenous vaccines combination. Of course, it's a different, you have to check what is the problem, you have to isolate the pathogens, and then you will make a selection together with us. What kind of composition do you need for your flock? So it could be that you say, okay, it's just ORT. I would like to have 1 isolate, or maybe we were gaining 3 or 4. Then we can put it into a vaccine. So just ORT. Or maybe there are some compositions, ORT Bordetella, for example, Bordetella avium, or some 3-fold vaccines as well with Staphylococcus aureus. But we are producing as well combinations containing MG and MS. And you have a lot of different possibilities, and some customers as well are ordering ORT, Staphylococcus aureus, and reovirus, for example. Let's, like I said before, it's designed to the need of the customer and to the need of the flock. So now, again, to get an idea, how is the way to an autogenous vaccine? So the first step is you are facing a problem in the flock. So you have sick birds. You do not know what it is. It may be viral or bacterial antigens, or sometimes, because it's never forbidden to suffer from 2 or 3 diseases at the same time, you have to check what is weakening the flock, what is making the animal sick. And you do have to do sampling and to identify the pathogen or the pathogens who are present in your flock with a very well done diagnostic. In the step 3, there will be the production of the farm-specific vaccine. After this, of course, if you receive the product, the application. And hopefully you and us, we collected the right antigens to put into the vaccine, so that after application, the animal is forming very well antibodies to protect itself for the field challenge when ORT or whatever it's coming again with a field pressure, and then you will have a very healthy flock. The vaccine will not protect you from the infection, but it will, of course, reduces the morbidity and the mortality if a field infection occurs. So to obtain isolates, taking samples, it's a key point. Because you have to be sure that these isolates you're using in the vaccine are the right ones. As I mentioned before, you may have in the trachea ORT, but it does not have to be a big problem. It could be that it's just while breathing in, it was coming to the trachea, it's in the air around the turkey in the flock, and you are sampling it and you're thinking, okay, this is a very mean ORT isolate. It could be, yes, but it would be better to open up some sick birds to see if you are able to catch these ORT in the alterated air sacs, in the foamy air sacs, or in the lung with pneumonia, or as what will be for the most aggressive isolates from the joint, for example. And of course, it's very important to take it as clean as possible, because you do not want to have these non-pathogenic bacteria from the skin. You would like to have this one, which is making the big problem in the joint. Yeah, sample taking from fresh or living sick animals. So I would prefer to, because you can only take very well samples from dead or culled birds. They should suffer acutely from the disease and not 3 weeks after the first problem. Maybe the first pathogen is already gone. And the sample taking should be as clean as possible as well. You should work very clean, and a targeted sample taking. So if you have joint problems, sample from the joints. You can as well take additionally samples from the body cavity and from the organs. This is not the problem. But if you're facing arthritis in the flock, don't take only samples from the trachea, because it's easy. We are looking about invasiveness. This means we prefer the bacteria or the isolates which are coming from the pericardium, the brain, the joints, the bone marrow, or the alterated organs. And it is very important to cool immediately the samples and to transport it as fast as possible to the next lab. And then the lab can do an isolation and the storage. At Anicon, we perform the cultivation, the identification. So we are using for the characterization of the isolates a MALDI-TOF, so the mass spectrometer. We can do here in-house a typing. So for example, for E. coli, ORT, Pastorella multocida, for Pastorella, for example, as well as a capsule type, or we do have a special PCR to see if it's maybe Pastorella subspecies septica. We can check the virulence genes for E. coli, and we do as well sequencing for viruses. So what are the criteria for the selection of the isolates? My first question, if somebody is sending me pure isolates, is it sure that this is linked to clinical problems? Because sometimes you are sampling, you have some pathogens, but the flock is not really sick. It's maybe just one bird, two birds, which are popping up with some clinical symptoms, and you're making a necropsy. But this does not have to be the problem from the whole flock. But if you are sampling as in an acute phase of a disease, you will see there are clinical problems. You have a diagnosis already in your mind, and you will collect the samples regarding to the alterations, regarding to the problems. And then you can say, yes, it's linked to the clinical problems. This pathogen may lead to this problems in the flock. I would like as well, if I receive samples, the tissue origin of the isolates, because as I mentioned before several times, if I have an ORT isolate from the joint or from the altered lung, I would prefer it before I would like to have a isolate from the trachea, because it should be very invasive. And it would be as well helpful if it's just one single animal you were able to catch this isolate or this pathogen, or do you have sampled several animals? So we say at least 5 animals to test, because then you can have an overview of what's going on. If you have just one bird, maybe the others are suffering from different problems. It does not have to be, but it can occur. And then we type the isolates. So for example, ORT serotype, we will check if we have former isolates from you. Is it a new serotype? Should we add it? Or is the old isolate several years old? Because we are able to use as well older isolates, so we are allowed to. And we would like to update the vaccine. And so we are always in a very close contact with the customer to check what's going on, which isolates are relevant. And it's very important never to stop to continue the diagnostics as well if the vaccine is running very well and you are very happy with this. But be aware, there can be a selection pressure as well if you're vaccinating. And maybe some other pathogens or serotypes of the same pathogen are popping up, and you have to be aware of this. Yeah, in this picture, you can see here this and this from the other side. This is on our new Anicon autogenous vaccine production facility. It's already ready, but not finally. So we are working on it to move there soon in 2022. We was a little bit delayed because of coronavirus, because sometimes lack of material. If you're building such a huge lab or production facility, you can imagine how many single pieces you need for construction and so on. And yeah, Corona, I think it was harming all of us. You see here, just to have an impression, this is the whole Anicon campus right now. This is a feed mill. This is not belonging to us. This is the Department for Feed and Food Safety as well. Here is our old vaccine, not old, our today's autogenous vaccine facility. This is the Veterinary Diagnostic Center. This is a storage there. And this will be, as I mentioned before, the vaccine production facility, the new one. And we do have as well another lab where our PCR kits are produced, but this is not on this campus at the moment. This is in a 3 or 4 kilometers away from us. So I would like to give you a short overview how it looked like to produce a vaccine. So it's like this. We will receive an order. We will select the isolates, as I mentioned before. We are thawing the stored isolates because they are deep frozen, stored. We are propagating the isolates. We make a determination of the titer. We will perform an inactivation of these because, as I mentioned, all autogenous vaccines are inactivated or dead ones. Sometimes you have a concentration of antigens. Then the antigens and adjuvants are mixed together. They were put into bottles. Labeling and packaging will come. And then we have a sterility controls for at least 2 weeks, and then the final batch release. And of course, the registration of shipment and the shipment of the vaccine. And as you see here in the picture, it's very tailor-made production. So we have small batches from 3 bottles of 1,000 doses, so 3,000 for very small, maybe, for example, commercial layer flocks, and as well for batches with 200,000 doses. So everything is possible, but it's it's a manufacturing. Yeah, we do not have, we do have a lot of machines which can do a lot of work, but the bottling, for example, it's made by hand under very clean productions under laminar flow. And as you see here, our colleagues are working under complete protection. And this is how the vaccines are produced. So, but there are some limitations, of course, if it's coming to vaccines. So maybe after a while, if the birds are kept a very long time, the protection wears off, it could happen. But yeah, normally in Turkey, it's fitting, but in commercial layers, for example, if you have maybe here in Germany, they are keeping the commercial layers over 80 weeks of age. And this is not very rare that they are doing this. And you can imagine after such a long time, if the last vaccination has been in week 18, after 70 weeks or 65 weeks, it could a little bit be problematic. Yeah, as I mentioned, the protection can be overcome by high infectious pressure or stress, everything which is weakening the immune system. And for some pathogens, you have no cross protections to other serotypes. For example, Rimarella annatipestiva has several serotypes and they do not perform a cross protection, and as well Pastorella multocida. And it's very, very important to continue the monitoring and update your vaccine if it's required. So the summary, I have, I think, 30 seconds left. Autogenous vaccines can significantly support flock health and economical outcome, and they can reduce the need of antibiotics. And the continuous diagnostics and monitoring are crucial to update to the vaccine, because, as I mentioned several times, never stop monitoring. After it's better to be one step ahead and not behind the upcoming pathogens. So thank you very much. Do you have any questions? I hope so. Thank you.
Yes, Swantje. First of all, thank you very much for this comprehensive information. I think it's extremely valuable, especially from the background of what's happening in Russia. From the new year, we'll be banned to use growth promoters and some preventative antibiotics. So this is getting more and more actual for us. Second, I want to thank Peter Beth and you personally for accepting the participation. We appreciate that. And 2 questions from my side. Do you have any experience with bacteriophages as alternatives for antibiotics and alternatives for vaccines? And what is the % of turkey farms in Germany or in Europe which use autogenous vaccines compared to classical approach, commercial vaccine?
I do not have any experience with bacteriophages, so sorry for this. And to be honest, I do not know how many turkey farms are using autogenous vaccines, but there are a lot, because we in Germany, we do not have a registered vaccine for ORT, for example, for turkeys. We do have one for broiler breeders, but it's not for license for turkeys. And because of this, so ORT is one of the classics in autogenous vaccines for turkeys. And there are some flocks which are in a very lonely area, so where there are only these turkey farm, and then maybe no other chicken and commercial layers and no other poultry around, then you will not have a need of these vaccines. But even in these cases, it can change when it's coming somehow to contact with wild birds and they are spreading something, or you are in the close to the route where some transports are occurring. But in a very dense poultry populated area, I would say most of the farms are vaccinated. I would say 95%, because if they once faced severe problems, they will not stop to vaccinate.
Okay, thank you very much. Коллеги, so we're perfectly in time, so we might have some minutes for question and answers. Коллеги, если есть вопросы, у нас время есть в запасе немножко. У кого возникли по презентации или, в принципе, по теме вопросы, задавайте, пожалуйста. Минут 10 мы можем этим посвятить. Включайте микрофон и задавайте вопросы.
Эдуард Самвелович, слышно
Да,
меня?
да, слышно. Да, слышно, Василий.
Все-таки хотелось бы у коллеги Свантье поинтересоваться, как относится она к вакцинам против сальмонеллеза.
Там перевод идет, да? Do you hear the translation, Свантье?
No, I didn't
No?
hear any translation.
Okay,
I
then
was aware of salmonellosis, but this was the only thing.
Vaccines. So the question was about the feasibility and usefulness of using salmonellosis vaccines in Turkey.
We do have licensed vaccines against salmonellosis, and because of this, it's not an interest of autogenous vaccines. Okay. And so we have, I think, with the license one is SEST. But I have to check. I do not know exactly. But so far we do not produce a vaccine against SE and ST. We do maybe have one or two customers which were facing different types of salmonellosis, like, I don't know, Stanley or whatever. And maybe we do have one or two customers which would like to have this in their vaccines, but it's not very common. And I do not get a feedback from every customer, but if they are ordering again and again and they're not stopping, it seems to work.
Okay, thank you. Ответ таков, что поскольку есть зарегистрированные коммерческие вакцины, и в основном они включают в себя, вы знаете, два серовара, это энтеритидис и тифимуриум, и по большому счету в Европе основной фокус как раз на них, и все ограничения и нормативы как раз прописаны по содержанию этих двух, то они не рассматривали необходимость и не было запросов на производство аутогенных вакцин против сальмонеллеза, против сальмонелл. Ведь было несколько запросов от нескольких клиентов по альтернативным сероварам. Ну, их очень много, мы знаем, да, 2600. Но, тем не менее, они не производят эти вакцины, и поэтому у нее нет собственного мнения на этот счет. То есть те продукты, которые зарегистрированы и пользуются с популярностью в Германии, они вакцинируются очень многими фермерами, они работают. И альтернативных задач по производству их просто нет. Есть еще вопросы, коллеги? Или мы переходим к следующему лектору? We will probably have some questions after we really go through your presentation in detail. And then we might send you a list of additional questions. If you don't mind, we would ask you to reply. So thank you again.
Yes,
And,
of course. Send me the questions and